Today I'm joined by Jenny Ross, who is mum to 3 boys, a successful blogger and writer, and is a leading light in the move to establish parent engagement councils for schools. Today, we'd like to ask Jenny about her insights into the transition process from primary to secondary school and why parental engagement is an important part of that process. So thanks for joining me today, Jenny.
My pleasure.
So listen, tell us, what is a parent council and why should a school have one?
Okay, so a parent council is a voluntary action group of parents that work in collaboration with a school to help improve the overall school experience and outcomes for the children. The council sets its own agenda, so it's based on the parents and what the parents feel that they need to improve within the school, and it really benefits everybody. So every school should really have a parent council because it helps the families, it helps the staff, and it helps the children.
So as you say, what are the benefits then to the children? What are the benefits to the parents? And of course, what are the benefits to the teachers?
Well, staff hear firsthand the issues or the ideas or the concerns that parents have. So quite often parents are invited into school, but that's for them to listen to issues that the school wants to talk about. Whereas this is kind of the reverse of that. So this is the school listening to concerns that parents have. So in that respect, it really makes families feel valued because they're being listened to. And there might be issues that families raise that the school hadn't thought about. And by listening and opening up that channel of communication, it can really help kind of iron over any gaps. Or, it could be something really, really small that the school hasn't realised that families are really struggling with or they don't understand. And obviously then relationships are strengthened between the school and the families, which can make families feel more included in the school, and then it improves the outcomes for the children as well. So the more that families are involved in their children's education, the better it is for the children.
So you have a child, I know, moving to secondary school in September from year 6. How has it been for him?
A very different year to the one we had expected, which is obviously the same for everybody. So the last part of it was obviously based here at home, and he's been doing his home learning. He was quite sad, obviously, to miss the end of his year 6 and that kind of that. He didn't have any of his transitions, obviously, and the last day farewells and all the lovely bits and pieces that they normally do. But saying that, he is very, very excited to be going to secondary school. So I think he's been more than ready for a while, which I know often children are in year 6, aren't they? They kind of, after that first term, they're just kind of ready to go, aren't they? So the sadness was short-lived because he's just really excited about going to secondary.
That's really lucky, isn't it? Have you done much work with him around it? Because I know the schools then, as you say, it's nice to mark things, isn't it? There's an ending, you come to an end, you mark it in some way, and then you have a new beginning. So why do you think he's so excited about it and not anxious? Because it's a mixed bag, isn't it, of emotions for lots of children?
Yeah, I think it's helped that most of his friends are going to the same school.
Right.
It's our local secondary school, so it's not completely alien to him.
Right, yes.
And he will be walking to school, much like he does now, going to primary school. They're very near to each other. I think things would be quite different if he was going to another secondary school where he would have to catch a bus, and it's that bit further away. So I think having it's quite familiar to him, really. Although he hasn't had his transition days there, he knows where the school is. And like I said, because he's got all his friends going there as well, I think that definitely helps.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, what do you think then primary schools could do better in, generally speaking, perhaps, in preparing children for that transition?
I think strengthening that communication with secondary schools. So my son's primary school's really good. They normally, under normal circumstances, have a lot of transition days where the children do go over. However, I think that before they have that, it would be really beneficial if they had the current year 7 children come back to the primary school and speak to the children and give them a bit of insight, be able to answer some questions. I mean, I'm really fortunate that my son is really excited, but I know that there are some children that are really, really anxious. And even the thought of going into this secondary school for their transition day can be really intimidating. You know, you've got the older children that, you know, I've seen some of them and they're taller than me. So it can be quite intimidating, can't it, for some year 6s? And also, I think having the teachers from the secondary schools come to the primary schools and speak to the children in their own environment first, and speak to them and answer any questions, and then they go over for their transition days. And obviously with parent councils, if every school had a parent council and nursery, then they could link up and they could communicate as well, because a lot of the anxiety from children going from nursery to primary or primary to secondary, the anxiety is there with the parents just as much as the children. And if the parents feel knowledge, that they've got the knowledge, they know what's going on, they can ask the questions, even sometimes ordering the uniform, how do I do this, or can they wear this, or do they need to take that? It's just kind of nice to have that communication there with other parents that have been in your position. We know we do have the open days at the secondary schools, but teachers are very busy and they've got everything else to do, and obviously their main focus is the children. So a good way with the parent councils, a good thing with the parent councils is that they can work together as well and communicate across different schools.
Because there's a sense of belonging that lots of research has shown is very important for children in that transition, a sense of community. And I remember myself with my own kids, when they were transitioning just from, their school to the other school, one of the parents had a bit of a barbecue in her garden. And the children and the parents, we all came together just for a short period of time, but it broke the ice. And it was such a lovely thing to do that the kids just chatted and did whatever they did. The mums and dads kind of had a chat too. So again, you are building slowly the bridge between the two sort of schools and building sort of a sense of community, which I suppose then the school council can be a really great part of that. So tell me, I know that lots of schools look at parental engagement and they find it very difficult, because I write a great deal actually for different people around parental engagement with suggestions and ideas. So with that, what do you think, perhaps generally, that are there any other tips that you could say that you would see the school counsellors being able to provide in transition?
I think that's a really good idea about what you've said about barbecues and things like that. I mean, you could do something similar and that they could support each other in that way. I think there's lots of things that they could do, really. And you've got it, like I say, from both ends of the spectrum. You've got it from nursery to primary as well as primary to secondary. And it's quite evident, it feels quite evident that from a parent's perspective, there seems to be slightly more at the younger end of the scale than the older end of the scale. So I think, kind of having days like that where the parents can come together. And
I was just thinking more informally as well, certainly after this unusual year. I mean, tell us what sort of it requires to organise a school council. People listening to this say, school councils, oh gosh, what does that mean? And how much work do you need to put into it? And, how much organisation does it take? If they're slightly shy of school, they had a bad school experience themselves, they're not keen on coming into the school. So tell us how, you went about setting up such a really great school council and what it entails.
I think initially people struggle with the idea of a parent council because it's quite a different approach, and people often think of it as a PTFA, which it isn't. So we're not there to fundraise or do anything like that. We are there purely to improve the outcomes of the school. So initially it can be quite difficult to set up. I mean, it needs to be run by a chairperson who would be a parent themselves. So they need to have the ability to kind of hold the meetings, and they would meet with the head teacher. So the head teacher would, or a deputy head, would also attend the meeting, because obviously there's going to be questions and things that come up that they need to answer or be able to explain. It can be a bit of work to get it up and running, but then it depends on the school. Our school had been through a particularly challenging time with our old head teacher, so parental engagement was incredibly low, and it took a lot to rebuild the confidence in parents anyway, let alone to come into the school and feel as though they could express their concerns or opinions. So initially for me, it did take some time. I mean, I've been living in this community pretty much my whole life, and I used to work at the children's centre as well. So I know lots of people, I know lots of the families. So initially I joke that it was me running around the playground, just grabbing people by the scruff of the neck and saying, come along, I promise it will be fine. I will. Yeah. I baked a cake for every meeting. I was like, come along. If nothing else, you can have some cake and a cup of tea. Yep. And then if you don't like it, you don't have to come back. Normally, I would have nabbed them by then. So if they'd come to the first meeting, they would normally stay. And I would look to have 1 or 2 representatives for each class in the school.
Yeah.
So we had 14 classes in this primary school. And we did get up to about 22 members, because not everybody can attend every meeting.
Yeah.
So it does take a bit of management. It takes, sometimes it can be more difficult managing a team of volunteers than it can staff. I'm used to managing both. So to me, it wasn't, I really enjoyed it. Yes. And some schools are really small, so they would have a really different experience. But it is that communication, and it is you are that bridge between, like you rightly said, Sue, some people are really nervous about schools. They might have had a bad school experience themselves. And you are that gap between them and the school. So you're kind of a safety net. And I would have people coming up to me in the playground, outside the school gates. I've had it where I've been in my local Sainsbury's and people have come up to me and said things or suggestions. And I would then collate that information, take it forward to, I would have a pre-meeting with the head teacher about a week before our parent council meeting and just say, these are the bits that I think we need to cover in the agenda. He would add anything that he wanted to also cover as well. And then we would put the agenda together, and the following week we would have the meeting. So even if those people didn't want to be part of the council, their voices were still heard. And in terms of workload, it depends how much you want to do and how far you want to push it. I wanted to work with charities. There were issues that came up in the school and ideas, and I thought, this is great. Like we would have some children come in hungry in the morning. Right, so could we link up with a local food bank charity and set up an emergency breakfast scheme, which we did. So it depends. It depends how much you want to do, but I loved it, and I just, the more we could involve the community and help families as well, the better, really.
Tell me this, as a former deputy head myself, is it a negative thing? Do you get loads of negative sort of suggestions and complaints? I just sort of want to see the balance about. You're very positive about it. You can see the benefits to it, and I can as well for the children. Tell me how you sifted through some of those sort of negative kind of maybe remarks.
I would say in the early days that we did have a few negative comments, not negative comments, but people coming forward with negative, their own personal gripes, if you like. And we did have a terms of business written up to say that we're here to discuss matters to help the school as a whole. So we weren't there to discuss personal issues. If your child had a particular issue with a person or something, we weren't there for that. We were there as a collective. And I think quite early on, the majority of the people got that. So if you had 10 people, 8 of those people got it, 2 maybe didn't to start with. And I think those people very quickly filtered out and realised, oh, actually, this is a really positive group and they're trying to make a difference. And, we dealt with it very sensitively, and if they did have an issue, that's fine, but obviously we'd say, well, maybe you just need to have a meeting with the teacher or something. This group is for this. And then they kind of realized, and then just as it established, most people knew what it was about, really. And once the ball was rolling and, you know, we were running with it, it was quite obvious that we were there to make a difference, and the topics we were discussing. So yes, it did in the early stages. I mean, I think because it's quite a unique initiative, really. It did take people a little while to understand what it was about and what we were aiming for. But after the first couple of meetings, people soon understood.
So we're coming to the end of the interview. Can you give us a couple of takeaways why you think school counsellors are so valuable, and why they're so valuable, particularly for children going through transition from primary to secondary?
They're so valuable because they open up that line of communication that sometimes isn't tapped into. You know, parents need to be listened to, but also they can have some really valuable ideas. You know, you have a lot of parents that are professionals in their own rights, and they want to help. Their children are their most important thing to them in the world. Why would they not want to help and improve their children's schools? So, you know, it's a really, really wonderful tool that schools can have, and it doesn't cost them anything because the parents are all volunteers. And if you've got that level of passion from parents in a primary school, wouldn't it be great to take that and have a parent council in the secondary school, and for them to move that passion over, and then they're meeting more parents, and you've obviously in secondary schools they're bigger, and creating a bigger group of parents there to really help the secondary school as well. I mean, to me it just seems like an obvious and amazing opportunity for schools to take part in, really.
So thank you so much for your time and your insights and your ideas. Would you be able to, or would you be up for, if people wanted to ask you some questions, or if they wanted some advice a little bit about setting up a school council, either parent or a teacher or a school or a head teacher, would you be up for that?
Absolutely. Yeah, my pleasure. I have helped people before, and I'm more than happy to help people again. So yes.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So tell us where we can get in touch with you.
Well, you can reach me on my Twitter account, and you can also reach me via my blog. Have you got my Twitter account details there, Sue?
I have Jenny Ross. No, it's not. Jenny RO 680745661.
You can see why I couldn't remember that off the top of my head.
So if you're interested, also, I'm Sue Atkins on Twitter, so you can contact me and I can put you in touch with Jenny. Also, it's jennyross36@gmail.com, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you also write at trulymadlymum.wordpress.com. So there they all are. It'll all be on the sort of show notes that go with this. I'm so grateful for you, Jenny, to take time again to talk to me and give me some insights. I do hope we've inspired some schools, some parents, to kind of embrace the idea of school councils, because it's not just a parent-teacher kind of association thing. It's quite different. So thank you again for helping us out on our transition programme.
My pleasure. Thank you.